Many great things have been accomplished in the name of religion, or at least inspired by it. Charities, great works of art, and more. But unfortunately, great acts of evil can also be committed by adherents, even those persons who cloak their evil intentions entirely in the camouflage of piety. That's just the case in tonight's chilling story, the first in a brilliant long-running series written by yours truly to be enjoyed by all of you. So, gather around the oil drum I've set on fire in the middle of the woods. Oh, looks like some of you have had both your legs broken after an encounter with the chupacabra who stalks the area. Well, drag yourselves through the mud on your stomachs, and maybe someone can take a look at wrapping up your wounds in scraps of old cloth. In the meantime, soothe your parched throats with whatever remains in your rusted old canteens. Maybe pull out the last of your meager food supplies and start nibbling because it's time to hearken. I used to be a Catholic priest, so I know all the darkest secrets of the Vatican. I write this from a filthy motel in America of all places, a country I confess myself to have never much liked, which has now become the only safe haven from my pursuers. The Church's power is far greater here than its low profile in the national consciousness would lead one to believe. But still, it is as weak here as just about anywhere else on Earth. Here, if I'm lucky, I may be able to evade the clutches of the most powerful organization in the world, for long enough to spill their darkest secrets. I have no illusions about escaping them forever, of course. It's only a matter of time before they catch me, and when they do, I can only pray that my death comes as rapidly as possible. So yes, I'm a Catholic priest, or rather, I was a Catholic priest, so I know all their dirty secrets, all the cruelty and darkness they keep under careful wraps. Some of the dreadful atrocities I know from reading the secret files from other priests, some from hearing them from their own mouths, still more I witnessed with my own eyes. And of course, I committed some of those atrocities with my own 2 hands. Well, I never said I was a good person, did I? No, I'm as rotten as they come. I was born in a little town just outside Napoli, Italy, or as you Americans would call it, Naples. And I awakened to my evil nature nearly as soon as I could walk and talk. I stole, cheated, lied, and sinned as I pleased, doing whatever I thought would be to my advantage. I was only 7 years old when I committed my first murder. Decapitating a neighborhood boy with a claymore sword so I could steal his Super Nintendo and games. I then planted the murder weapon under the bed of a local woman whose face had annoyed me. When the police discovered the sword there, word got out fast, and a mob of angry townspeople soon stormed the place, slaughtering the woman along with her whole family. They set the place alight, and I sat back on the grass on the other side of the street and laughed as the flames rose higher, snacking on a fresh-baked trapezzino I'd filched from the local bakery. I cannot fully describe the thrill of joy that passed through me in that moment, knowing that I'd caused so much pain, had stoked the fires of hatred so effectively without even trying all that hard. I couldn't even fathom what I could achieve if I'd actually applied myself. I could spend innumerable pages just recounting my sins as a child, but that's not what's most important here, so I will be brief. Suffice it to say, by age 8, I was a full-fledged and expert killer, applying my craft with the passion of a true devotee. My total kills, which I tracked with tally marks on an unmarked sheet of paper, swelled to 100, then 500, then 1,000, and even more. As the town's population shrank, the terrified townspeople locked themselves in their homes and shivered in the wake of my rampage, but it was no good. I would torch their homes, or engineer gas leaks to suffocate them in their sleep. Many people tried to flee town, of course, but I blew up the only bridge in and out with an improvised explosive device to entrap them. It was as I was giggling to myself and watching cars of screaming people careening into the gorge beneath the demolished bridge that I first heard a clearing of a throat that would beckon me into my new life. I spun around and found myself face to face with, of all people, a priest. I could tell at a glance by the man's black vestment and the white ecclesiastical collar around his neck. He examined me with crossed arms and a wry smirk across his clean-shaven face. I, of course, immediately tried to pass off my giggles as sobs. Within a split second, my face was a mess of snot and tears. "Father," I gasped, "my parents were on that bridge." I staggered toward the priest as though in shock. One hand fell to my side, where I'd concealed a small dagger. I'd never killed a holy man before, and I was eager to see how it would feel. Perhaps, if I was able to incapacitate him first, I could make his death slow and agonizing enough that I could get him to do just about anything so long as I promised to let him die, even curse the name of Jesus Christ, or swear allegiance to Lucifer. That sounded like a great deal of fun. I drew the dagger and moved to plunge it into the priest's chest, but what happened next astonished me. There was an ear-splitting bang, and the weapon flew from my hand, rolling on the mossy forest floor. Looking back at the priest, I saw him holding a smoking revolver, his grin growing larger. "You pass," he said, clearly pleased. "Those puppy dog eyes would have worked on just about anybody. Quite impressive, I must say." "I pass?" I repeated. What on earth was this priest talking about? Why was he carrying a gun? And why was he so skilled in handling it as to shoot a dagger out of my hand? "I saw you rig up that bridge with explosives. What a neat little job you did, too." He seemed actually excited. "I imagined that all the murders in this town were your doing as well." "Who are you?" I asked. "What are you doing here?"
"I'm Father Collini," he said, "and I'm here to offer you a job at the Vatican. Let's just say, you seem like perfect priest material."
"But why?" I asked, utterly dumbfounded. What aptitude could I possibly have as a priest? I don't even believe in God.
"Exactly," said Father Collini, pleased at my statement. "That is exactly the sort of thing that separates you from the rest of the simple-minded sheep that pass themselves off as humans. While others blindly listen to authority, you are not so easily controlled. While others are fit only to serve, you are among the elite few worthy to join our ranks."
Of course, I didn't think much of his offer. I still didn't quite understand what I was being offered, so I had no interest whatsoever in joining the clergy. Nevertheless, I kept my expression fairly neutral, trying to convey a sense of general interest without committing to any particularly strong emotion. I would wait for my chance to either strike and kill the priest or flee. Before I could do much thinking, I heard a groan from behind me. Stepping closer to the edge, I saw the source of the vocalization. A young woman, covered in blood and bruises, was climbing up the edge of the cliff, holding a newborn infant. It seemed that she must have fallen partway down in the demolition of the bridge, but caught herself before her fall could reach a fatal height. Since then, she'd been climbing, carrying her baby, and had almost reached the top. She had only one free hand with which to climb, so she intermittently caught holds on the sharp rocks with her bare teeth. When she saw me, she gasped and took a break from climbing. "Please, help us," she cried. I had just started to instinctively figure out how I could most effectively torture this woman, when I felt Father Collini sweep me aside. He pushed me a few feet away, and then shot me a warning look that said I shouldn't try anything funny.
"Signorina," he called. "I'm here. It's just a little bit further, so keep climbing." Alla buon'ora, she said, nearly in tears. Bless you, padre. She moved with renewed strength born from hope, and the sight just about sickened me. Rather than being able to torment this woman and send her and her child to gruesome deaths, I was being forced to watch some do-gooder priest put on a sappy display of saving her life. It was exactly the sort of thing that, in your American parlance, pissed me off. It was only when the woman was an arm's length from the top that Father Collini knelt down, still being sure to keep me in his sight, of course, and stretched out a hand to her. "Pass me the child," he demanded. The woman's face lit up and she nodded. With great strain, she lifted the baby up and Father Collini took it in his hands. He drew away from the edge, smiling down at the little bundle, and I could have almost vomited. "Grazie, grazie," gasped the woman, climbing with both hands now and dragging herself slowly over the edge of the cliff. "You saved our lives, padre. What can I ever do to—" Father Collini's grin widened, and before she could finish her sentence, he dropped the baby from his arms and swung one leg gracefully forwards. With the effortless skill of a pro footballer, he drop-kicked the baby right over the edge of the cliff. The young woman screamed and, without thinking, spun around and lunged for it, tumbling once again over the edge. Her shriek of fear, confusion, and betrayal echoed from below and then stopped with a final crack. I burst out laughing, and Father Collini joined in, his laughter hearty and deep. "Is this what being a priest is like?" I asked the father. "I get to kill people whenever I like?" The father chuckled and tousled my hair. "Well, there are a few rules, but for the most part, yes. When you're a priest, the feeble-minded morons of the world are like toys for you to play with." I nodded and laughed. The priesthood is starting to sound better and better. How do I get started? "I'll train you back at Vatican City, boy," he said. "But first we have to deal with a bit of cleanup. You've thrown this town into enough disarray that we're just planning to kill everyone and be done with it. Care to join us?" He handed me a military sniper rifle, which I accepted gratefully. Those first few hours after meeting Father Collini were some of the happiest of my life. We established ourselves in the church bell tower and sharpshooted anyone stupid enough to go outside or show their faces in the windows. With each head that exploded under the force of our heavy ammunition, the two of us would laugh and laugh. When the population of the town had been exterminated to the very last soul, Father Collini called in a helicopter to pick us up. As I climbed on board, heading for Roma, or as you stupid Americans would call it, Rome, I knew that I was heading towards a wonderland of violence and evil unlike anything I'd ever imagined. As we passed over countless provincial farms, I set many of them alight with an industrial flamethrower, cackling at the sight of the idiot peasants scrambling to save their precious crops from the conflagration. We landed on a helipad in Vatican City, and as we stepped onto the solid ground, a grinning Father Collini spoke. "So, boy, it's several hours before you need to get settled in your new apartments. Why don't I show you around the place you'll be working?" "Oh, you've already got things planned out to that extent," I remarked, crossing my arms. "What if I don't like the job you've chosen for me?" Father Collini laughed. "Oh, don't worry about that. You'll be working in one of the underground laboratories, and trust me, you'll enjoy it." The streets of the Vatican were like a candy shop of delicious horrors. Human corpses were skewered on spikes all around, and underneath them, priests and nuns were fornicating with one another on the cobblestone streets. We passed some sort of military installation in time to see missiles launching, and Father Collini informed me with a chuckle that those missiles were no doubt headed to various non-Catholic orphanages around the world. The church's own orphanages were a valuable source of disposable pawns, so it was best to get rid of the competition. We reached a vast cathedral of grey stone, and Father Collini typed in a code on a keypad next to the door, and then it swung open. He stepped aside to offer me entry. Welcome to Holy Laboratory Number 1, the oldest and most prestigious scientific research center in all of the Vatican.
I stepped inside into a sanctuary that stretched into the distance. All around, members of the Palatine Guard stood at attention in their tasseled uniforms, rifles in hand. As I walked the great distance to a desk on the other side of the room, I admired the scenes preserved in stained glass along the walls. Depicted there were countless scenes of human frailty and cruelty, mass slaughters, war, diseases, and famines. However, as I approached the front, I saw something far more engaging even than these scenes. A few meters, or as you stupid Americans would say, a few feet, behind the desk, a human figure was pinned to a cross with rusty nails. He had long, brown hair and a scraggly beard, and was nude except for a tiny loincloth, and I could see the mark of 1,000 whippings and beatings all across his body. He groaned and squirmed, tears in his eyes, and as he shifted, the nail wounds in his body oozed yet more blood. I laughed warmly and asked Father Collini who this man was to enjoy such personal attention in the most prestigious lab in the Vatican. Father Collini chuckled. You don't recognize him? You must have seen his face in paintings hundreds of times. I'll give you a hint. We in the Vatican owe everything we have to him. I gasped and moved closer. No, it can't be. Jesus Christ himself? The one and only, said Father Collini. The Messiah himself. Just as he promised 2,000 years ago, he returned. And wouldn't you know it, he started preaching the most irresponsible things about being kind to your neighbors and having hope for the future through faith in God, the sort of tripe that threatened our control over the people of the world, and so we went ahead and captured him and killed anyone who'd heard him preach. At first, we tried our best to crush his will in the torture chambers and turn him into a propaganda-spewing puppet, but he proved to have an unusually strong mind for such a do-gooder, and we had to give up. Well, he is a god after all, so I suppose it's not all that surprising. Anyway, since we couldn't control him, we hung him here to celebrate our capturing him, a feat that proves our powers are greater than that of God himself. Father Collini grabbed a rotten tomato from a cart and hurled it at the Son of God, who winced as the fruit struck him. "Release me now, O cruel ones," demanded Jesus. "There is yet hope for your souls to join with my Father in heaven, if you but turn your eyes from your wicked ways and—" He was cut short by another tomato, this one thrown by my own hand. He sputtered and spat the foul-smelling pus from his mouth. Father Collini and I laughed and laughed. We went through security next. They started with a metal detector, which beeped like crazy as we stepped through, but Father Collini told me that was all right. No true priest would be caught without weaponry, so if we didn't set off the metal detectors, then we would be detained. We stepped onto a platform on the pulpit, which then descended into the floor, an elevator. It took us down a dozen levels, past these sorts of military bunkers, patrolled by yet more members of the Palatine Guard. We reached our destination floor, and with a ding, the door opened and we stepped out into a sleek, white-walled laboratory. "Welcome to Holy Laboratory Number 1, said Father Collini. "Welcome, that is, to your new home." I have so much more to tell you about the twisted rot at the heart of the Catholic Church, but it seems I had better wrap this up. I've got company, and it's not even Vatican forces, as I might have feared, but ordinary polizia, or what you Americans would call police. They must have gotten word of what's going on here. You see, the population of this little town in Ohio was once a few thousand, but now, well, let's just say that, even on the run, I have a way of reducing population numbers. What can I say? I'm rotten to my very core. I thought I'd cut off all communications out of town, but I must have missed a cell tower somewhere, because the streets are crawling with police vehicles looking for the man who murdered half the town. They won't find me, though. Amateurs like these could never capture a man trained by the Vatican itself, not even if the numbers were 10 times what they are. So, keep yourselves busy doing whatever it is that commoners like yourselves do when your betters aren't around. But don't concern yourself. I shall return soon to spill everything that I know, and do my best to strike back against the evil organization that has the whole world entrapped in the palm of its hand, like the Monkey King in the palm of the Buddha. I may be pure evil, but I might just be able to accomplish something truly good. If I can survive long enough, that is.